Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Mastering Post-Production Sound. My name is Joel D. Catalan. I'm a sound re-recording mixer, supervising sound editor, been part of the post-production sound industry for the past 16 years. And I'm here to help you navigate, believe, and thrive in the post-production sound industry. So today we're going to dive into surround sound panning. We had our recent inner circle group coaching call, and we had a lot of wonderful questions. But one of the things that was brought up and was asked was, how do I know what to put in each of my channels when I'm mixing and surround? Now, if you missed it, I have a video that I put up on my surround sound, my 5.1 surround sound philosophy, and it's kind of just like a walkthrough. I was just on the stage and I was talking through for a one-on-one coaching student, and so shout out to Brandon again for letting me have permission to share that with all of you, because it's been very helpful to many. I'll leave it annotated somewhere, either there's a link up top here or I'll leave it below if you haven't checked the video out. But I wanted to go a little bit deeper into actually in the speaker use. What do I actually do? How do I use the panning? What do I put in there? Because when we talked about it in our inner circle group coaching call, it was more specifically like, how do you know what to put in each channel? Like, where do you start? So let's go ahead and let's just, have a little conversation about that. And hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a better grasp of how to use your panning when it comes to mixing sound for TV and for film. And hopefully you have a better grasp of just conceptually what to do. And the next time you sit down at a mixing console, you mix a short film, TV series, project, documentary, whatever, you'll have a better understanding and feel more equipped to comfortably navigate 5.1 surround panning. So in this diagram here, just put this together in Canva. I love Canva. But you'll see this black rectangle thing represents our screen. And you can imagine this in a couple different ways. This could either be the screen at a theater, or your big screen TV at home, or your normal screen. But this is all assuming that you have a 5.1 setup. Obviously, in my environment and a mixing facility, we're always set up in 5.1 and now Atmos as well. Either theatrical Atmos if we're working on big film, or home Atmos. But really simple here. We have our monitors, we have our left, our center, our right channel, our left surround, right surround, and then our sub, our LFE. Here we are right here in the middle. So this can be us either chilling at home or in the sweet spot at a theater. If you want to, go talk theater, just pretend that these are behind a perforated screen. They're back here, center back there, right behind there, and then you'll have like a wall of surrounds, on this side, in the back, the right surrounds here, and then the rear's there. So let's just talk philosophy-wise as far as break it down, dialogue, what we do with dialogue as far as panning, what we do with music. We'll go ahead and break down also sound effects. What do we put in the center channel? Do we put stuff in the surrounds? Do we put stuff in the left and right? And our backgrounds, we'll talk about backgrounds as well. And what about Foley, right? What do we do with Foley? So let's reference just my Pro Tools session here. And just very simply set up, right? Literally just a track of dialogue, a track of music, a track of mono effects and stereo effects, because I believe it's important to talk about both. And then backgrounds, or rather stereo backgrounds, and then Foley, okay? Obviously, we can get deeper, when you have group and ADR, but that stuff all still lands under dialogue. So if we want to talk about dialogue, our philosophy with that, dialogue is always going to come out in the center channel. I'm always going to work at making sure that dialogue is king. We want to hear the words, right? Without our words, we do not have a story. So the general rule of thumb is that we keep all of our production dialogue, all of our ADR coming out of this center channel. Now, does that mean that we cannot experiment or, not place dialogue outside of this center channel? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that. It means we can actually experiment. Sometimes, based on the content we have, using just this center channel right here isn't sufficient. Sometimes, let's say something's happening on the screen that's maybe off screen to the right that needs to pull our attention. Well, we will go ahead and throw that dialogue then in the right channel right? If it's off screen, or perhaps it's behind us, maybe somewhere back here. Now, what that looks a lot like on our panner here, I'll just call up our panner quickly. There's our dialogue. So this, if you see, it's very familiar, right? You have left, center, right, left surround, right surround, and then our LFE right here, okay? And you can see as I did that, do you notice the, right here in the dialog bus, in the 5.1 bus, the information went there. So this, you'll see here, is set up exactly like you would have your monitoring, whether it's in theatrical or your home 5.1 setup. So as we said, dialogue likes to stay right here in the middle, but what we'll do, you'll see as I just take the panner right now, every once in a while, maybe you have to throw your dialogue back here because the story has, part of the script has, dialogue that is coming from off screen, and then it pans back, whips back to the center, because we're always, the rule of thumb is keeping our dialogue in the center. So if you think about in a theater, right, you're sitting in a theater, you want to hear the dialogue coming from the main characters. And what is the rule of thumb with our main characters and our actors? They're always in the center of the screen, right? There's always a focal point. And so our dialogue is going to follow that. So that's why generally as a rule, we want to keep dialogue in the center. Of course, like I said, there's always the occasion where you need to maybe pan it over here, and story-wise, it really is just asking for that. Then we go ahead and do that. But generally, we're going to keep the dialogue in the center. Let me go ahead and just mute this real fast here. I'll show you quickly. We'll go like this. You'll see just for setup purposes, I have these set up here, and I also have buses. I have a dialogue bus, a 5.1 dialogue bus, 5.1 a music bus, a 5.1 effects bus, a 5.1 BG bus, a 5.1 Foley, and then the mix bus. And let's see if I go like this and I take this out of mute, you'll see that whatever's going in my mix, so these are now all feeding the mix, you'll see they're represented there. So right now it's a left, center, and a right mix. So if we go ahead, let's just go ahead and mute these. In our dialogue, right, you'll see in this mix right here, this mix bus, as we take the audio and pan it, it's now showing up, as you see in the bus, to the right channel. If I want to send it back to the right rear, you'll see it there. But if I put it in the middle, you'll see how it's split between the rear, the left surround and the right surround. Same thing over here. If I go to the left surround, hard left, and then dead center. So your ADR and your loop group are also going to be treated that way. They're also going to be coming up the middle, unless with loop group, okay, loop group being this is added, any kind of added dialogue, crowds, things like that in the background actors. Sometimes, you'll want to spread them out. Maybe you have a channel over here to the right and you have a channel over here to the left, okay? So that kind of stuff happens, and you're going to occasionally, want to have some space. So maybe you have one group over here, you have another group over here, right? And then you're creating some background to kind of wrap around the dialogue. So that's dialogue, okay? Let's go to music really quickly. So music, here we go. Let me mute that. Okay, so music, you're going to be doing predominantly, you're going to be working with stems, right? Either stereo stems, or if you're lucky, you'll have the composer and the scoring mixer will provide you 5.1 stems, because they've gone through and they've actually already kind of preset that. If that's the case, I don't touch the panning. I leave it in 5.1. We love it. We don't want to mess with it. But generally, you're going to get a stereo stem, a left, and a right. Okay, and so So let's go back to Pro Tools. This is what you're going to be provided with, right? You're going to have a stereo track, and you're going to have it hard left or right, right? And if you look here, you're going to see that in the music bus, right, it only passes left and right. But look what happens if I get the music and I tuck it back a little bit, right? Guess what happens? It starts to fill up, right? Now you have some information in the left surround and the right surround. If you're working with an up mixer, right, the up mixer will do a nice job if you keep it hard left and right. It'll create for you a real nice 5.1 spread. But you can do that too, the poor man's version away, poor lady's version away. I could take this and I can move it back a little bit. I can bring some into the center. You see how I have some information there. But as a general rule of thumb, we like to try to leave nothing in the center, because what happens is when I start putting music in the center here, guess what? And look at our mix here, right? So I'm going to go hard left, right, okay? I'm going to put the music there. Let's call up our dialogue here real quickly. There's our dialogue. Let's unmute that so we can send our signal. So you'll see that when you have dialogue, okay, going right up the center as we do here, stereo left and right music, here's the spread now. You see right here in the mix bus right here, you have information coming out of the left, the center, and the right. Well, we want to keep that clear. See, let me just get this out of the way here. See this? I moved it to the back. See that center channel right here? See that center? That's what we want. We didn't even hear the dialogue. So what I like to do is I try to keep the center clear of music, because if I start going in, guess what happens? You see the information is the center channel information is getting louder, right? I don't want to compete with the words, because what did we say in the beginning? Dialogue is king, right? Dialogue is telling our story. Dialogue is the most important thing. This is why often when there's a lot of sounds competing, subtracting some of the information that's going through is best, because it creates clarity. Now we can hear the words. So if I did something and I spread the music back a little bit like that, now I know that what's coming in the center right here, you'll see here, right here, center is the dialogue, and I've created that space and room for this. That's a general rule of thumb I'm going to keep with music. So if we go on to sound effects, so my sound effects, okay, here's where we get to have fun. We get a lot of fun with sound effects. I love mixing sound effects. I've fallen in love with it. But sound effects allow us to have a lot of fun with using our space. And you'll see here, I like to use the room a lot. I like sound effects that are either moving around, we have information back here. Generally speaking, okay, when we talk about sound effects, we have hard effects, we have sound design, we have background, ambiences, whatnot. Your general kind of ordinary sound effects, door knocks, or cell phone rings. Let's think, what else? Key jingles, things like that. Generally, that's going to be something that is usually coming up right up the middle, something that has to do with our picture, right? And generally, let's just imagine right here in the middle of the screen, you have an image of a door, and someone's knocking on that door, right? And it's coming from what we see. I'm going to put that information right here in the center, because I'm following what's happening on the screen. Now, the opposite, right? Let's go to something like a car by. Let's say a car is driving by and it's going from screen right all the way to screen left, and it's going past us and it's going out of the picture. Well, in that case, we're going to have the sound starting over here in the right speakers. Using our panner, we're going to be moving that image slowly into the center and then across into the left speaker and then eventually off screen. Or sometimes we'll move it all the way to the back, because depending on how the picture, what the picture's telling us, maybe that's the case. So as far as panning goes, our knock is usually going to be in the center. Our car bys are going to come off screen and follow that pattern like we just did. And we're going to take the panner and we're going to go across to the center, and you'll see, let me bring it down here. You'll see it happen in the effects bus here and the mix bus there. But starting in the right channel, right, we start to take our car by slowly. Now we're getting to the center. We're in the center there. Now we're going to some information going to the left speaker and eventually all the way to the left, right? And then we bring the volume down and we're out, right? So we have certain sound effects that can use the space, that can use our surrounds. Let's talk about jets, helicopters, things in the air, right? What an awesome opportunity to use our space. When we have a helicopter, right? Let's say it starts over here. on our screen left here. And what if it happens to go all the way across, right? And then goes out of scene, but it's still with us, right? Where it's still part of the scene. But what if it then goes from left to right? Here, we'll just pretend this is our helicopter. But it goes from left to right, and then it goes, let's say, all the way in the back behind us. Let's say we want to get that feeling. Or let's say you're in a crime scene, right? Think about it. Sirens are coming in left and right. Let's say there's an investigation. There's a helicopter. Some criminal is on the loose. How about we take that helicopter now and we start circling it? Because doesn't that happen in real life, right? Think about it. Helicopters circling around our neighborhood. We hear it. We know something's going on, right? So let's say we have a scene, right? Now, what a fun opportunity to take that helicopter and start using the room so that when it's played back in the theater or played back in our home system, we now feel like we're there. We feel immersed with the tension of the scene. So if we go to our panner here, right, I'm taking that mono sound effect, right, and now I'm going all the way around. And that's literally what I'm doing. I'm riding the automation, right? I'll either use a joystick if I'm on a console that has the joystick. You know, if you have that option, the new S6 or old, Digidesign Icon or D Command, right? Or if you don't have that set up, you could use your mouse, right? You can use your mouse and get it right, write that automation. And now you're feeling like you're there. You're feeling that helicopter go around. Look at what it's doing down here, right? In this bus right here. Do you see that? It's going through all the channels. We're feeling that go around us, okay? And that's with just a mono sound effect. Let's talk about stereo effects real quickly. So stereo effects, right? Right here, right? You'll have these linked up or not. What I like is when they're linked up, look what happens. If I grab one panner, right? Let's say I'm grabbing this right channel and I bring it in. Guess what? Because I have it linked, the left side is also following with the exact proportion, right? It's going in. If I want to go back, guess what happens? It's also doing the same thing. If I come in, right? Everything is being mirrored here. If I go all the way across, guess what? It goes all the way across, right? So with stereo sound effects, and like we were talking about in our inner circle coaching call, what goes in the left and right? And at what point do you move some of that information back here into the surrounds, right? So I can't do double. That's okay. That's all right. When do we start putting information back here? Well, this is going to happen. You're going to get stereo sound effects. And let's talk about the helicopter we were just talking about, right? With the helicopter, right, you may have several different elements that make that up. And that's the way it goes, right? When we're mixing these things, it's not generally just one sound effect. You may have one that goes like this, right? And there's like an engine to that, some really heaviness to it. Then you might have some supporting stuff as well. Well, with this, what you could do is, what I like to do is we'll go like this. I'll unlink that. And so when I unlink these parameters here, now I could take this and I could take that stereo track and I can now take both those channels and move them like that. Do you see how they follow now? And I can't do that if I have everything linked. If I have everything linked, guess what happens? When I move one parameter, it goes to the opposite. So I have to unlink first, right? And let's get my position here. Let's say I want to create some kind of, there we go, some space. And now I can go and I can start panning them around. But again, as far as what we're putting in the lefts and rights, when you talk about sound design, you have things that are very, they're cut to have a left and right. We can put some of that information back here in our surrounds. Now, let's say you have a fight scene and the punches are being used here in the center. Like you have punches that are cut here. Let's say you have some whooshes to go with them too, and they're kind of designing to go, pow, pow, I'd like to take a little bit of that, those whooshy things, and I like to spread it a little bit. Put some, maybe center it up a little bit, or just hard left and right, and then tuck it back a little bit, so you get some in the back of the room, right? A lot of the sound designy moments that we have are cut with stereo sound effects and mono sound effects. So I'll go through and I'll listen to each channel what I like, and like sometimes, ooh, I like that element back here. I'm going to tuck it back here, maybe hard all the way. And then I'll have another element where maybe I want to have hard left and right, and then one kind of tucked in the middle. It just depends on what I'm working on. But a general rule of thumb is any hard effect that is tied to the action on the screen is going to go in the center of the channel. Okay, so let's go back to our diagram real quickly. That's going to live right here, right? Think of them as, gosh, I hate saying boring, normal sound effects, but just everyday kind of stuff, and it's going to follow the screen. So again, like I said, if it's a car and that element's kind of going by, right? If it's, a twig snap, but it's off screen, I'm going to pan it maybe hard right, or maybe I can pan that behind me, and that's not to say that there's also some other elements that, hey, maybe we need to have some of, a stereo sound back here, right? Because we're in the woods and we need to hear some crazy something back here. And then there's a mono sound also that's traveling with it. So it allows us to get very, creative. I like to always think of myself in the position. So this position here, when I'm watching the film or the TV show and I'm mixing it, what am I going to be hearing if I was the main actor? I put myself in their role, right? In their shoes. I am them. And in that moment, what is the most important thing to hear? And oftentimes it'll take, I'll get it in the first pass. Oh, okay. Yeah. But sometimes it'll take a couple times. I'm like, oh, you know what? Actually, I don't think we should hear that. I think, or I think that should play more over here, or let's get some more of the backgrounds back here. I worked on a TV series, for Stars called Heels, is about wrestling. And actually, some really great news is we're going to be seeing a release of that. More eyes are going to be able to get their eyes on that. Coming very soon to Netflix. They're going to release seasons 1 and 2 there, which I think you should check it out, because the work that we did with the crowds, oh my gosh, they're so much fun. But a show like that, I remember I was working on a scene. We were in an imaginary city in Georgia called Duffy. The backgrounds, and this is a good time to move to backgrounds here. The backgrounds we played were very lush. They were very lush, and we used the surrounds. That was mixing Atmos as well, so we used the Atmos speakers too. But we had background, like some of the panning. Some tracks were back here, some were like this, some were right here in the middle, kind of, also to the left and right, hard left and right. Some were right here, just barely, a split between left and right a little bit. So we went real immersive, real lush. So it really just depends, where the character is. Where do you want to transport your audience? That's a great thing about mixing. I think that's some of the funnest part of mixing is panning. This is my favorite. No doubt, hands down, my favorite thing to do is to mix backgrounds and effects and use this, to use the space. Like, I pride myself in my mixing as far as like using the surrounds. Like, I just love it, and honestly, it's just a philosophy that I grew into. I just experiment. No one taught me how to do it. No one said, Joel, do it like this. Never put stuff, back here in the right surround and left surround. I just thought to myself, if I was in this position right here, where would I hear this stuff? And being a former musician, I pride myself in my ears. So using this technology to create an environment, whether it's with the backgrounds or the hard effects, the sound design, the music, dialogue, all of it, to enhance the viewing experience. The last thing I want to say about backgrounds is this, is generally speaking, because we have dialogue, right? Dialogue is always going to be, 99.99% of the time going to be going through our center channel there. Sometimes because dialogue will have rough production tracks, and sometimes, we have to go to ADR, from production to ADR, and our fantastic dialogue editors will, generally fill those gaps of production that are re-recorded for ADR with fill, with some air. Sometimes you'll notice, oh, the production feels like it drops off. Well, that's where backgrounds come in, and that's where having mono backgrounds is super important. Because what happens is, if you take, let me just mute, let's mute the effects, unmute the dialogue, and unmute the backgrounds. All right, I want you to pay attention to this mix right here. Let's just move these over here. I'm going to get better at zooming one day, friends. Okay, this mix right here. Right, let's bring this down. You'll see this is just dialogue coming up the center, right? Well, for some reason, we have a track that all of a sudden loses some of its center production and goes to like a fill, right? One, we want to fix that right away, but let's just say it happens. This is why we'll have background to now fill it with production. So if it does go, guess what? You see how that's still there? Now we've put some kind of air background noise that is similar to our production or environment where we're at, so that it helps smooth any of the dialogue hiccups, any of the bad edits, or God forbid there are any bad edits, but we try not to make that happen. But any of the holes that maybe weren't filled with some production noise to help the ADR. So this center mono of backgrounds is super important, and I am a big fan of scenes having multiple layers, winds, airs, insects, carbis, occasionals, things like that. Multiple layers, and also having multiple tracks in both the mono and the in stereo tracks. Okay, so again, if we're talking about, let's talk about like maybe some room tone, right? We're in a scene where the main character here on screen is talking, and he's in a, just in a house or something. Generally, you're going to have room tone that is cut in mono and stereo. One mono to help the stuff that's coming up the center channel, to help any kind of dialogue noise, or any edits. And then another, a stereo room tone where I like to feel up the room. And instead of going hard left and right, I like to bring it back into the room. So now I'm feeling like, oh, I'm hearing stuff here and I'm hearing stuff back here. And then sometimes I'll tuck it in here too. Sometimes I'll go crazy and I'll go right here, or generally it's like this. I like to put it right here. So we're getting some information here in the center as well, helping in the left and the right, and some in our oops, let's go like this. We have this muted. Boom, you'll see, there it is. Okay, so that's what the spread is for this pan setup right there. So you see it's well covered as far as I'm concerned. So that covers backgrounds. Again, be creative. There's no hard rules. Like, this is mixing. Have fun with it. Experiment. Get the reps in. See what works. See what doesn't work. That's what a lot of us did, kind of growing up in this industry. Let's talk Foley. So Foley, let me mute this, get this out of the way. Foley is one of those ones where, here we go. There we go. Foley helps us. It's got a very, very crucial role because it helps cover us, especially when we go from production to ADR. Like, guess what happens when you film ADR or you shoot ADR and you go from production dialogue that had, some cool movement to it, like some cloth, some feet, feet shuffling around, all that stuff, all that life that lives in the production track. Because let me tell you, those production mixers, one of the hardest jobs in the world, they capture real life. They capture that day. When that is sucked out because of either an edit or, ADR, we have to replace it for some noise or changing the line. We have to now replace it with Foley. And Foley is generally going to live in the center of our tracks to cover anything in the main production tracks. Now, of course, we're going to have those other tracks that have some offstage stuff, like feet coming in from the right, background people walking left and right, things like that. So Foley, you can probably get away with most people having, and I did this for a while, having an LCR. I would have a left, center, right, because that's all really I would do. But then I wanted to open up things a little bit more to be able to walk people off, all the way to the back. It's just I just now everything I do is in 5.1. So you want to have fun with it. You want to be able to cover stuff, but most importantly, you want to cover that production that is in the center that goes away when we go to ADR. But as a general rule of thumb, you don't get too crazy with Foley back here all the time. The number one rule to all of this, whether it's sound effects, backgrounds, Foley, heck, even music, is it a distraction? We do not want to distract from what is happening in this very important channel, the center, because the most important is our dialogue, what is happening on screen. If any of this other stuff gets in the way, then we have not done our job. We want to create an immersive experience. We want to help support and tell the story, but we do not want to get in the way, because when we start distracting our audience, we start getting gimmicky and putting stuff over here to get their heads to move. Guess what happens? All of a sudden, this audience member is not paying attention to the story. They're like, what the heck is coming out of the right surrounds? They don't say that, but they're like, what's that noise back there? And they start turning their head. So use it strategically. Have fun with it. That's the number one rule. Have fun. Experiment. Get your reps in. And just remember that these panners, right? This is powerful stuff right here. Have fun. This allows us to have the tools we need to create stories sonically that help support the vision of our filmmakers. So if you found this video helpful, please leave me a comment below. I'm so grateful that you are here. And if you did miss my video on explaining my surround sound, my 5.1 surround sound philosophy, go check it out. Okay, I'll leave it up here again, like I said, either up on the top click or down below in the description. Maybe it'll be somewhere over here in one of these videos. But thanks again for being here. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. If you're completely new to mastering post-production sound, I'm grateful you're here. I got a free gift for you. It is my free e-guide. It's the 5 core principles that I believe every post-production sound, what am I trying to say? Every post-production sound professional should know. That's what I'm trying to say. Just head over to masteringpostproductionsound.com/insider's guide to grab your free guide. Thanks again, friend. I appreciate you being here. And if you think this video is helpful, please share it with somebody. I'll see you in next week's video. Thanks.